I have to be honest, despite my particular love for casual gaming experiences, it's not what I look for in the games we play. We've never been afraid to take on a survival title or more mature RPG that will deliver intense and hectic moments. In fact, I prefer when a game has a blend of emotions and stressful moments mixed into it, and often find myself bored when experiencing the truly casual titles that tend to offer a gameplay loop leading more towards monotony than anything else. Then, there are games that come around offering nothing but peace and tranquility, and just as you feel a twinge of boredom set in, its well fleshed out mechanics and gameplay loop suck you right back in. Hi, my name's Lil, and this is our review of Lightyear Frontier. For those who haven't been blessed with the knowledge of this title yet, Lightyear Frontier is what I like to call a planet fixer-upper. The entire focus is cleansing the different regions of the world you've landed on to get it set up and habitable for not only yourself, but future friends as well. As you start exploring the world, you'll find a few mysteries hidden in the strange ruins scattered around, and a door with lights that tease you with a secret anytime you fix up one of the zones. The Curious Door isn't the only perk that comes with fixing up the world, as new materials, recipes, and mech upgrades are equally waiting for you should you choose to press on and see what each region has to offer. This is a perfect place to segue into talking about the gameplay in general, as the whole system felt fluid in ways that most games seem to miss the mark on. The loop of fixing up an area, harvesting its resources, unlocking a few new recipes, upgrading your mech a few times, building a pretty pink barn and automating oil production, then returning with our mech to whatever new region we were unable to cleanse before, thanks to our new upgrades and fancier tools. If you get bored of the standard loop and want to focus on beautifying and building, that's an option. We oftentimes found ourselves crafting some delicious food for the local wildlife, feeding all 3 of their nests in the area, and getting excited at the idea of a bountiful harvest the next day. Yep, in Lightyear Frontier, if you want your resources to regrow quickly, you're going to need to keep the local wildlife happy, and avoid stomping your mech's clunky feet right next to their faces if you even want to get near them. If you feed enough of one type of wildlife, you'll get a notification that one of these 3 nests in the area is now well fed and happy, and you'll receive a boost the next day to the resource regeneration. It was a clever mechanic that I'm a huge fan of. As an animal lover, the very idea of having to feed cute critters in order to increase production is the exact kind of automation system that keeps someone like us happy. No more do we have to cage their cute faces and harvest their resources daily. Now we can venture into their homes, offer them some treats, and they'll even dig up some goodies for us right then and there. Moving to talk about the resources themselves, I'm over the moon with how few resources they actually have in the game. Rather than having 20 different ores and rarities that we'd have to fill up inventory slots with, they opted in for different stations and recipes that utilized ingredients in different ways. Aluminum, iron, and steel were all you needed to get from start to endgame. And while you aren't going to obtain steel until you're much further in, the crafting options and progression of the resources and stations felt far more sustainable and enjoyable than most in this genre. Less is truly more in this department. Despite that they opted in for fewer overall resources, it didn't leave us feeling like our home customization and beautifying options were hindered in the slightest. In fact, due to the varying different color flowers all over the world, combined with the paint maker mixer stations, we felt our customization options far exceeded the standard. Knowing that we could mix and match our colors to make an insane rainbow, or a beautifully painted home and garden that matched our moods in the moment. A fair tip, if you're wanting to have a steady flow of paint and colors so that you can change around at a moment's notice, then instead of just harvesting the flowers around the world, make sure you chop them down. They'll grant you a seed, and then you can have your own color garden in the comfort of your backyard. Considering you can recolor nearly every item you craft, I'm sure it's easy to see why a paint garden might be necessary for those that love customization. To touch on the home and garden experience itself, there was a lot of enjoyment that came around crafting a well-functioning homestead. There aren't any survival aspects, so you're not growing food or upgrading your mech to ensure your personal safety. And that's what made the overall game an honest, casual experience. But there is a huge advantage to having a well-organized setup. By the second week, we found ourselves rearranging our setup to make room for the new crafting stations we'd unlocked, and as that trend continued into weeks 3 and 4, we ended up erecting beautiful barns that housed our chests and automation systems, making it even easier to bounce from station to station, collecting materials, reinitiating more production, and reaping the rewards of good organizational skills. There's even an added bonus in that if you add enough cozy decorations, it'll upgrade your homestead area and increase production output. So now there's a purpose to exterior decorating. If you're someone who enjoys plants the way I do, you'll likely want to have a huge garden, just because. I will state that having a high-producing garden makes the rest of the exploration and upgrade systems easier, as you'll need massive amounts of plant oils if you're upgrading multiple mechs the way we were, so it's not for naught. But there was a point where we'd had enough plants, yet I was still raising new beds and installing stone fences to protect them from absolutely nothing. It looked good though, and that's what matters. If you get bored of your own personal home recipes, you'll be happy to know that every so often a merchant will fly down to keep you company and offer you up what they have for sale. These can range from different mech cosmetics to new trinkets to beautify your homestead with. You can also buy useful things like seeds too, but honestly the world was pretty plentiful with them, so we never found ourselves purchasing resources. I think I appreciated this most of all, honestly, as it made the merchant feel unique and fun, and gave a purpose to visiting them when they came. There are more unlockable NPCs after you get a bit further in and build things like a radio tower, and it'll make collecting the world's resources more enticing, but we like leaving a few things to a surprise, so we won't touch more on that. All in all, I was impressed with how well meshed the multiple aspects of the game were. When I say it felt like one of the most seamless loops I've experienced in a while, I'm being honest. In fact, this is a perfect time to segue into talking about the cons of the game, because there's really only one complaint I have about it in terms of the entire experience. The mech. It chops just fine, it mines just fine, it can even walk quietly up to critters and feed them just fine. But holy heck, is the base experience of the mech, without any of the booster or speed upgrades, quite clunky. If you wanted to simply jump up a short cliff, it was a 50-50 gamble as to whether you'd have it angled just perfectly or be toppling over and doing backflips awkwardly until you hopped out of your mech, flipped it right side up, and got back in to try again. 10 times out of 10, it was quicker and easier to go the long way rather than attempting to scale mountainsides, with very few exceptions. Obviously, with some thrust and booster upgrades, it will make it easier, but it's still not ideal. My personal pet peeve is when I'm simply walking down a somewhat steeper slope and all of a sudden my mech flops down, forcing me to get out and reset it. 2 words explain the situations perfectly, and those are ragdoll physics. It quite literally feels like if your mech is thrown off in the slightest way, it ragdolls and flips ridiculously until someone forces it to stop throwing a tantrum. It was funny the first few times, but by incident 50, it wasn't. Regardless of our complaints, it's still a pretty minor issue for us. It's clear that the developers laid out the map intentionally, and giant mechs hopping over mountains wasn't in the plan. There are a few spots that encourage some creative movement and island hopping, so there are spots that you'll need to utilize your mech skills. But just know that it's not every moment, so to save you some frustration, just take the path more traveled. Now that we've gotten through all that, let's talk for a moment about the co-op experience. We originally played the demo of Lightyear Frontier solo, and enjoyed every moment. But as we assumed, the co-op option only enhanced our love for the title, as we got to take in gorgeous sunsets and feed adorable critters together. In a more real analysis, having a second person made the entire experience all around easier, obviously. Setting up our home base, tending to the plants daily, and cleansing new areas, or just going back to old ones to collect more materials, was way more fun with even just one other person. We didn't even mind the fact that we needed twice the materials for twice the mech upgrades, as the ability to rotate who is doing what tasks makes it more fun in general. Sometimes you just don't want to water the garden that day, or feed the critters, or rearrange the workshop, and that's why co-op is just better in general, because chores are more fun with friends, or husbands in this instance. The only true downfall would be that you do need to consider multiple mech upgrades, so it'll take longer if you're progressing together and waiting until you both have them to progress. But you can also opt in to allocating different upgrades to different people and progressing at a faster pace, so just know that that option does exist if you want to move quicker. We tend to take our time to enjoy the games we play and explore all the nooks and crannies of the world together, but if that's not your thing, no worries. It's at this point that I'll say, even though we're not rating it due to its early access nature, it's definitely one worth picking up if cozy simulation experiences are your thing. The amount of bliss I found in just wandering around the world, picking up things, and beautifying my homestead is too great not to recommend it to those who appreciate this playstyle. It's that game you sit down with at the end of the day to decompress with gorgeous graphics, wonderful ambiance, and a peaceful planet all to yourself. Mostly. Coupled with the mystery of a giant purple door and the promise of more content in the future due to its EA nature, well, let's just say we'll be revisiting it often, and there's a little red button that says subscribe you can press if you're interested in revisiting it with us. For now, we have to give a massive shout out to the Lightyear Frontier team for allowing us to experience and review the game early. It's always an honor when we're included in them, and this was one of our personal top cozy releases for the year. So it was that extra bit of sweet that just makes your month. That's going to be it for this video, but if you're looking for a useful link, all of them can be found in the description. For those with any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. We're always happy to respond. Thanks as always for watching, and until next time, Fort friends.